My name, you may ask? Samuel Chase, an urban explorer of sorts. I like to see abandoned places and walk along paths that have been long since forgotten. This is a book that I'm writing in order to chronicle my journey around the United States of America. My goal is to see every ghost town that remains standing, some of them full cities and others merely ruins. In this book, there are to be no details left out, and every word is truth. March 19th, 2018. Only a few days before, I finished exploring the 2 sites in North Carolina that I needed to see. Proctor was the first ghost town that I visited. Proctor was a small town until it was mostly flooded by the construction of the Fontana Dam in 1945. Some parts could only be reached by boat, while some buildings and a cemetery remained relatively undisturbed, and some buildings could only be seen if the water level was low. Mortimer was the second location. Mortimer was a well-known lumber town. Not much stands today, but there are still some residents, and the ruins of the old mill were beautiful. Now that I think about it, the whole area was beautiful. These 2 places will be explored in more detail on their specific pages. Today, I entered the state of Virginia. My goal in the next couple of days is to reach the Jefferson National Forest. In this forest are the ruins of Lignite, a town in the 1800s that was known for its iron ore refineries. After the iron ran out, everyone left. The National Park Service of Virginia has been planning for a while to remove the ruins and place a few hiking trails through the area. I want to see the ruins before they're gone. I was too late for Chippewa Lake Amusement Park, and I'm not going to let another opportunity slip by. Tonight, I rest in Richmond. And tomorrow, I'm going to venture onward to the forest and to Lignite. March 23rd, 2018. I haven't slept for 3 days. I'm just so confused. I feel like it's still watching me. I think the best way to cope with this would be to recount the tale. This might seem counterintuitive, but for me, putting it down on paper helps me to understand things better. So maybe the event will be easier to make sense of if it's not cooped up in my mind. Maybe it was just a nightmare. I've had those in the past. On the 20th of March, I made my way through Richmond and followed the road through Charlottesville and its suburb, Ruckersville. Ruckersville looked to have seen better days. Not quite a ghost town at that point, but it was pretty close. Had I been doing this project 10 years from now, Ruckersville would be in this book. Many of the houses were wrecked and collapsed, but there was one house which stood out amongst the overgrowth. I somehow managed to get my stupid self lost and ended up in a cul-de-sac with only 2 houses still standing, and only one looked structurally safe. Most times, I can resist exploring abandoned houses. Usually, the worry of a trespassing conviction is enough to quell this desire, But for some reason, this house pulled me towards it, like it was calling to me. There were no other cars around, and I saw no other people, so I decided it would be safe to explore it. I parked my car in an area that was pretty secluded and quietly walked toward the house. I was still a bit nervous. It was the middle of the morning, but I couldn't wait until night to explore. The compulsion was that strong. I took a deep breath and stepped onto the overgrown lawn. I slowly made my way up what looked like car tracks from years past. As I got closer to the house, the pull seemed to grip me tighter. I began to feel as though I had to explore this place. At the top of the tracks rested a dark blue, rusted car. All 4 of its tires had gone flat years ago, and half its windows were either broken or missing. There was plant growth inside and outside of the car. I examined the car closely. I couldn't tell what model it was, but I could see part of the logo, which I recognized as a Ford, and due to the style of the car, it had to be from somewhere in the late 80s to the mid-90s. On the ground near the car, I found a heavily rusted license plate that read Sun Chew. This name seemed strange to me, but I didn't think much of it. I turned to look at the house, which now seemed to be looming over me, like it was watching and waiting for me to come in. I walked up to the front door of the house with my heart racing faster with each step. I saw the nameplate of the house on the ground, picked it up, and read it. 14 Branchland Court. I grasped the tarnished doorknob and slowly began to open the door, almost expecting something like a raccoon or fox to jump out at me. What I didn't expect, however, was for the door to simply fall off its hinges as soon as I pulled on it. The house didn't look as bad as I was expecting. The roof and some of the upper floor had caved in, but some of the first floor and probably the basement were still intact. I looked to the left and the right and found that reaching the rooms on this floor would not be a good idea. There was too much rubble for me to move through, but that wasn't the only reason. The force that had called me to the house was now pulling me to the basement stairs. As I approached the stairs to the basement, I began to feel colder, as though a breeze were tickling my neck. I proceeded to move slowly, step by step, but about halfway down I froze in my tracks. I could have sworn that I heard something like a sigh or a whisper. I reached the bottom step and turned on my meager little flashlight that I always have on hand. I shined it into corners that were not already exposed to the mid-morning sun. There were cobwebs and rotted wood everywhere. There was also a high level of rodent activity and bird droppings on the ground, probably from an owl that perched up in the rafters. There was a door on the left side, closed, and a bathroom on the right that was missing a door. As though something had snapped in my brain, I charged at the door on the left like a wild man. I kicked it in, and I expected the force of my kick to cause the rest of the first floor to collapse, but it did not, to my surprise. This room looked pristine. Except for the pile of rubble in the middle, part of the roof was covering the hole in the floor, which bathed the room in black. I shined my flashlight across the room to see where I could maneuver around and look at things. I shone my light into the corner at a shelf and suddenly dropped my flashlight. I screamed out in horror. On the top shelf, there was a blue and brown totem of sorts, staring at the corner across the room. I picked up my flashlight and shined it at the totem. I released a little nervous laugh and stopped suddenly. I could have sworn that I heard the sigh again. Out of curiosity, I began to dig through the pile of rubble to see if I could find out anything about the person or people who lived here in the past. As I began to dig through the pile, I found a dirt-stained banker's box that was still in pretty decent shape. It must have been shielded from the elements by the pile and the collapsed roof. I pulled out the box and waited for the pile to settle back down. I opened the box, holding my flashlight with my teeth, and began to sift through its contents. On top of a stack of papers was a plastic or clay medallion of sorts. I thought of it as a mutant Pikachu with a sly, happy smirk, like a creature from a game I played as a kid. I placed the medallion at my side and went back to digging through the box. Contained within the box were comic pages, which must have been drawn by a child. The comic was called Sonichu. I began to read the first installment of the story. Apparently, Sonichu is a combination of Pikachu and Sonic the Hedgehog, another video game character from my youth. As I dug deeper, I found other things besides the comics. Photographs of a man wearing the medallion that was now at my side. I also found pictures of women. As I looked through these photos, I thought I heard more whispering. Names, to be specific. Megan, Ivy, Anna, Crystal, Patty, Sweethearts, Christian. These were only a few of the words that I heard. I was starting to get the creeps and decided to leave. I took my flashlight, looked at the totem, and froze like a deer in a pair of headlights. The totem, which I could now make out as Sonic, was now turned to face me. I got up to run, but the gaze of the totem was paralyzing me like Medusa. Then it got weirder. The medallion began to glow and levitate before my eyes. It began to move closer. Its little smirk was now a toothy grin. I began to believe that I was about to be possessed by the devil, or that he was going to take my soul. It moved ever closer to me, and the toothy grin opened like that of a vampire. It went from my neck, hissing words that I will never forget.
My heart level has been shattered, and I will now have yours. You are not a boyfriend-free girl, and that means you are a jerk.
The medallion began to glow even brighter, like it was charging up a spell or something.
Curse ye Hami!
I had to face my fear. I found a piece of rubble and threw it at the totem. I wasn't shining my flashlight on it, but I heard it fall over and roll. I was free of its gaze. Right before it finished its spell, I shone my flashlight on it. It stopped charging and hissed angrily. I turned my back to the room and ran out into the light, but the medallion did not follow. I guess it didn't like sunlight, or light in general. I didn't want to, but I turned my attention back to the medallion one last time. The medallion just hovered there, looking at me, like I were a tasty morsel on the other side of an invisible wall. Escape crossed my mind at this point, but the medallion compelled me to stay. I stopped thinking rationally. I just wanted that damn thing destroyed. Then I saw it. The totem had somehow rolled back into my line of sight. Out of its mouth came a thick, black fog that began to engulf this room as well. I tried to run up the stairs, but the invisible wall was now blocking my only exit. It was then that my heart stopped. The medallion began to float over to me again, faster than it had before. It wanted my flesh, but I was not about to feed it. At this point, the flashlight was no longer having any effect. I had only seconds to react. I bolted for the totem. I picked it up, not wanting to make the same mistake twice, and threw it with all my strength into the ground. It shattered in pieces. The fog began to dissipate, but the medallion was now on top of me. It drove its razor-sharp teeth into my arm like a piranha. The pain was unbearable, and I screamed in agony. I didn't care at this point if I were arrested for trespassing. A jail cell was far better than this dark, dank pit. I just had to hold out long enough for the fog to vanish. I began to feel the blood roll down my arm. For a rabid object, it did not seem too hungry. It just held on for dear life. It almost seemed like it only wanted me to stay. My only answer was a loud, resounding "Never!" The fog began to dissipate, and the medallion cried out in pain with a screech so high that it could shatter glass. It writhed on the ground and began to smoke as if it were burning. I chose this point to act. I raised my leg and crushed the medallion underfoot, its teeth drilling through my shoe. I endured the pain and held my foot until the screaming stopped. When it finally subsided, I felt the ground begin to shake. To my surprise, the invisible wall was now gone. But I didn't have that to worry about now. The house was about to collapse, and I needed to get out. I ran up the stairs as fast as I could, the front door seeming to move further and further away from me, but I managed to escape. As I bolted through the front door, the house finally collapsed in on itself. I fell back on the grass, weakened by my ordeal and blood loss. I had to act quickly, and I needed to get to a hospital. I always carry a first aid kit in my car, and I patched up the wound on my arm. Luckily, the medallion didn't take off too much skin. My foot was in better shape. It hurt a lot, but it wasn't that bad. At the hospital, I was given a shot of morphine while the nurse stitched me back up. I tried to tell her the truth of what I encountered, but she thought it was the morphine talking. Upon reflection, that reaction was a good thing. This experience has shaken me, but thinking back, it seems kind of silly. But I know it's not just a story. I saw it and experienced it firsthand. I saw the paranormal. Now, with science, not many people believe in the paranormal now. So my story of the junkyard mishap that I told the nurse will be truth forevermore. So, where to now, Samuel, you might ask? My answer? Off to Lake Night, Virginia, of course.